Hi everyone, welcome. This is Patricia from the International Hospital Federation. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you're all safe and well. We at the IHF are hosting this COVID-19 webinar and live Q&A series to share experiences, good practices, and insights from our members and other organizations across the globe. The series has been created with healthcare providers for healthcare providers, including decision makers and those involved in preparing for and managing COVID-19. We hope the lessons you take away from this webinar will help you in facing the crisis. I would now like to introduce the moderator of this webinar, IHF CEO, Eric de Rudenbeck. Eric?
Yeah, thank you very much, Patricia, and good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you to this webinar. So as it was mentioned with this series of webinars, we wanted to be able to share experiences from various parts of the world with different level of preparedness, but also different level of capacities in the hospitals. Today, we will go to Georgia, a country at the crossroads between Europe and Asia. This country did not face a major load of cases and is at a stage where the epidemic curve has been flattened, like now most of the countries in current days. But what will be particularly interesting is that we'll have the experience from the private sector. As in Georgia, the private sector is a major player for health service delivery with a private group that is present in the whole country and plays a major role in providing healthcare to the population. So this presentation will allow us to better understand the role of the private sector, but also how a group of hospitals that is covering a whole country is mobilizing itself to respond to a situation of crisis like this pandemic. Let me introduce you the speaker for today. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Professor Mamuka Chkhaidze, and I will call him Professor Mamuka, the Deputy CEO for the Medical Corporation Evex Hospital in Georgia. So this position has been in the hands of Professor Mamuka since 2019. He is, since 2017, the president of the Georgian Society of Anesthesiology and Critical Care Medicine. He's associate professor in the TSU, medical director of CME Center and Center of European Education in Anesthesia. Before, he was CEO at Georgian Medical Center in Tbilisi, the capital city from Georgia. And prior to that, director of intensive care department in pediatric and adult. He also worked at the Central Children's Hospital, Republic, and that sounds very much as a Soviet Union time, Republic Hospital, and in the pediatric intensive care unit. So Professor Mamuka is an MD in pediatrics and has a PhD in medical science from Tbilisi State Medical University. Professor Mamuka, we are ready to hear about the experience in your country. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Rudenbeck. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, all attenders. Now I'll share my presentation and we'll start. Well, a couple words about Georgia. Georgia is located in Caucasus region, Southern Caucasus, and the population is almost 4 million. And it spreads from Black Sea to Caspian Sea. It's about Georgia. And in this presentation, I'll briefly present and tell you about our experience and challenges we met during COVID outbreak in Georgia. As you hear, my name is Mamuka Chkhaidze, and I'm Deputy CEO Clinical at Medical Corporation Evex Hospitals. Very shortly about our medical corporation. It's a private corporation. And we have 18 hospitals all over Georgia. We have almost 9,000 employees at all, and more than 3,000 doctors, physicians, and a bit more than 3,000 nurses. In 2019, we have admission of 326,000 patients, inpatients, and almost 600,000 outpatient admissions. This is the map of Georgia, and there are, you can see our hospitals in 7 different regions of Georgia. So I can say that we are biggest medical corporation in Georgia, and maybe we are one of the biggest medical corporations in our region. Well, about our response. At the beginning, almost two months ago, as COVID infection reached Georgia, we made immediate response action plan. And there are 4 main pillars of our response. We have created new structure, a new strategy, that means action plan. So 30 different algorithms, protocols, and recommendations has been done by our team. I mean, Evex Hospitals head office clinical team. So we started TOT, training of trainers of hospitals, and also we created emergency response plans. So I'll go ahead. About response, structure, action plan, trainings, and monitoring. We have established dedicated epidemiology and clinical team, consisted our members of our head office clinical team, 7 members. They are clinical specialists, they are epidemiologists and medical quality specialists, and 24/7 accessibility. As I said previously, we have created 30 different main documents, regulations, recommendations, algorithms, and so. And we started immediate online and offline trainings of TOTs. In 18 hospitals, we have chosen 18 responsible persons, 48 TO2 trainers, and 54 support trainers. So finally, as a result, we have trained, and by the way, we are continuing this training daily, in the daily basis, more than 2,200 nurses and more than 2,400 doctors in ER, ICU, therapy in the key zones of our hospitals. Also, we have trained 800 administrative staff and more than 1,100 supportive staff. At the same time, we have started monitoring of the hospitals, how our trained persons are continuing their trainings. So in these tasks, we have got assistance of our risks departments, audit and clinical boards. We have clinical boards in our head office. Clinical boards consists of experts of their clinical specialties in our network in our hospitals. So, and we started weekly on-site monitoring of hospitals. And also we have done 4 or 5 scenarios of simulations per day. Also, we started working on general awareness, and you can see these posters and pictures that are put it all over the walls, all over the spaces of hospitals. This is educational posters. This is online campaigns, video calls, internal campaign. Together we can fight coronavirus, like these scenarios. Stickers in elevators, protecting wall, for registration desks to avoid this aerosol spreading to the registration personnel. And also very important issue was self and active monitoring of personnel. It means thermal screening, respiratory signs checking, and so these data are putting on application by employees, by our personnel, and is also under the control of HRs and administrative persons. This is also examples of our how we work on general awareness. This is the part of online and internal campaigns, posters, and so also very important thing at the beginning, we have stopped all visitors on the hospitals, and instead of direct visiting and direct visits, we have established so-called video visiting using iPads and other devices. So patients and the visitors can communicate using these devices, which is very important to control the infection inside of the hospitals. Then it's one of the very important steps has been done by our team at the beginning. This is a safe patient journey. Safe patient journey consists of three main steps, three main issues. Pre-triage infrastructure, and I'll show you this infrastructure in next slide. Training of the hospital staff by head office epidemiology and clinical team, and the TO team, pre-triage officer, triage nurse, ER nurses, doctors, clinical director, and quality director in the hospital. This is simplified chart of pre-triage system. This is a product of 4 different, more complicated, sophisticated charts, but just to give you a sense what I mean about pre-triage chart, this is here we are. So pre-triage, aim of pre-triage is early recognition of COVID suspect patient and isolation from other patient personnel. Location of pre-triage is in front of entrance or at the entrance of hospital space. So the pre-triage officer, usually nurse, makes thermal screening, clinical assessment, fever, respiratory signs, etc., and positive epidemiological history, traveling contacts, clusters, and etc. And you can see that if the question 1 and 2 or only one question on clinical signs are yes, we put this patient in isolation space in ER using PPE, usual PPE, then a real triage is made, and if patient is in emergency medical condition, we treat it as indicated. If no emergency medical condition, we activating NCDC service, testing and the referral to COVID or fever hospitals. If the only positive epidemiologic history is positive, we'll advise this person self-isolation, and also we activating NCDC services. And if no signs of COVID infection and no epidemiologic history, so we manage this patient according to our indications. I'd like to repeat that it's a simplified chart, simplified triage structure. Another very important issue also we have done, one of the very important issues is the part of new strategy is the TOT or training of trainers according to right and correct using of PPE, personal protective equipment. From head office clinical department, we have prepared recommendations for correct usage of PPE, when and what, donning and doffing, aerosol generating procedures and non-AGPs, etc. Then we have trained also trainers in hospital staff how to use correctly PPE, and also we have created PPE strategy for hospitals. This is, from my point of view, is one of the very interesting issues. So I'll focus a couple minutes around this strategy. So we have established local PPE teams in each hospital. These teams consist of leader that has been chosen by the CEO of hospital and team members. And they have three main functions. Local PPE team main functions are monitoring of training process. As I said, this training process is in the daily basis. And also we do external monitoring from head office. Second is control and monitoring of training performance. And also we do external monitoring. And third one is PPE spending control. And also in this situation, if some conflict appears inside of the hospital between personnel and PPE spending control person, we make audit, and we try to manage this conflict just to avoid overusing or incorrect using of PPE from hospital personnel. New strategy also means new clinical management protocols. I focused on two main clinical management protocols. This is pneumonia register, so-called new protocol. We daily monitoring of patients with severe bilateral peripheral GGO of pneumonia to detect potentially missed COVID infected cases, because we know in some cases the PCR or other tests might be negative, but patient can be infected by COVID. So this is very important issue, and we use this register to detect potentially missed COVID infection cases. And how we manage this sort of patients: isolation, treatment, diagnostic investigations to exclude COVID exposure infection. Also, another register which is very important is high-risk patient register. So that means daily monitoring of isolated, probable or suspect COVID on non-pneumonic patients, clinical assessment, diagnostic and laboratory assays, CT, X-ray, etc. Also, from clinical management point of view, very important is to prepare and preparedness of ICU spaces for COVID patients. Safe and remote airway management devices like glidoscopes, closed suction systems, HEPA filters for ventilators and critical equipment has been renewed. And also we concentrated on right and correct use of PPE and the PPE correct using. Isolation in case of COVID-19 confirmed. So in case we have got a patient or personnel inside in the hospital with COVID infection, we started trainings of personnel, treatment and supportive care of COVID patients, safe airway management, prompt positioning for severe pneumonia patients, diagnostic and laboratory tools, etc. And the safety trainings. Once again, PPE, isolation, safe airway management, AGP, safe protocol, hand hygiene, etc. Also, we have contact identification policies isolation and self-isolation policies, protocols, NCDC service activation, pathways, tests, referral, etc. One more issue we have put in the new strategies, staff infection and business interruption risks, so-called emergency replacement teams. We have limited the risk of active medical staff, immediate paid vacation option for employees over 70. By the way, it has been declined by most of employees. Same option for employees over 65, under 70, subject to hospital director approval. And we have changed 8 to 16-hour shifts to 24-hour shifts to decrease risk of infection spread between different shifts, and also very strict restrictions of movement between hospital departments. From administrative staff point of view, we have changed two week shifts where possible, achieved at least partially in most hospitals. In head office, successfully implemented remote working mode with sufficient coverage of rising risks. Also positions critical for continuous operation where identified and replacement plan was devised, and which that is very important. We have created so-called reserves of critical specialties, critical personnel. So we have identified critical departments, continued operation of which is of most importance, like ER, ICU, surgery, OR, identification of required reserve size in case of infection spread into hospital department at once, and analysis of existing human resources in these departments. We like to decrease demand to identify existing reserve potentials. So finally, we have got so-called bank of employees, bank of personnel, that is maybe not too much, but for our network is very important. So we have got 28 ERs, physicians, 21 ICU physicians, including pediatric and neonatal ICUs, and 10 therapy, internal medicine doctors, 59 nurses was created using our own employees. And this also includes junior, good experienced junior doctors and residents of second and third degree. And this, in case of existing infection disease hospitals in the Georgia, hospital beds are not enough. We have planned how to change profile of some of our general hospitals to COVID infection hospitals. Nowadays, we have changed the profile of 2 hospitals. One of them became fever hospital in Poti. This is the Black Sea side city. And also we have one COVID infection hospital in Kutaisi. Kutaisi is the second biggest city in Georgia. It's located in Western Georgia, in the heart of Western Georgia. And we have the strong agreement with Ministry of Health and government of Georgia. If the number of occupied, infected beds reach some certain points, we have to change the profile of 3 more big referral hospitals, including 2 of them in Tbilisi. So we have this schedule and we have exact hospitals, and we have medical personnel of these hospitals retrained for COVID infection hospital rules and aims. And of course, most important issue is personal safety, PPE again, and so on. And also determining expected PPE requirements because partially it will be covered by government, and also purchasing additional required equipment, as I said previously, to keep ICUs in good shape, in good preparedness, or in case of infection, COVID infection appears. Also, safe cleaning protocols, catering, safe catering implementation, and so. And also plan of safe discharge and transfer of existing hospitals to be prepared for COVID hospitals. That is all our strategy as steps done by Evex Hospitals to meet all these challenges COVID brought in Georgia. If you have any questions, I'm ready to answer. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Mamuka. That was a very interesting overview. Perhaps while waiting for potential questions, I would like to ask you one related between the public and the private sector, because what is very unique is, as you said, Evex Group is the largest private provider in the whole country. So for all these organizations that you have put in place, the identification of the hospitals that could be the one and that have been mobilized because you had COVID patient to treat, or that could be the one further mobilized. How did you work with the public sector? Did you have to wait for them to tell you what you could be doing, or did you take the initiative? Did you just coordinate, or you had to collaborate? Can you tell us a little more how it worked?
Well, okay, this is combination of all issues you mentioned. First of all this strategy is our own initiative done by Evex Hospital Head Office clinical team. All this preparedness and all these steps. But we have very good collaboration and cooperation with Ministry of Health. First of all, it is very interesting that in Georgia, almost 100% of medical cases, expenses, are covered by government. So we have to be cooperative with government, with Ministry of Health, because all our revenue is coming from the budget, from the government. So this is very good synthesis of cooperation between Ministry of Health and government, state, and private corporations or private hospitals. By the way, in Georgia, almost 95% of all hospitals are private, more or less. So cooperation between our corporation and other private hospitals and government is very important, because in case if state hospitals beds and capacity of state hospitals are not enough to cover all needs to treat COVID patients, we have agreement, as I said previously, to change profiles of our hospitals. And nowadays we have one fever hospital and one COVID infection hospital. And also we have a reserve of 3 more big hospitals in case of increasing the number of infected patients. We are ready to change the profile of these hospitals and also make them as a COVID hospital. This is agreement between government and our corporation. And also very important, in this case, government takes all the responsibility to obtain these hospitals totally by PPE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but still, I mean, for example, as you said, that was the initiative from Evex Corporation to develop the protocols, the plan, the organization.
Yeah.
Does it mean that within Georgia, the public hospitals or the other private hospitals have developed their own plans that might have been different, or they may have different protocols?
No.
Is there a unique health agency that at the end of the day is making sure that everything is aligned or not?
No, of course. We have NCDC, we have system of healthcare, and they give us general recommendations, of course. Yes, of course. And we are working according to these recommendations, and our strategy and our protocols are in cooperation and in synchronization with the NCDC and Ministry of Health recommendations, protocols, and etc. But we have, this is general recommendations from NCDC, but we also make very exact and very how to say, very detailed sub protocols and algorithms for our hospitals to make sure that they are making these safety protocols done by NCDC in the proper way, and also we add some more details that we consider is very important for our hospitals, because we know the problems, we know advantages and problems of our hospitals better than government, for instance, Ministry of Health. You understand?
Yes, thank you very much. So let's go to the questions I've received. So questions about, did you have anyone among your staff that has been COVID positive? And if it's the case, how did you manage that? And the second question related to the staff that might be linked to this one is, did you have any special arrangement like bonuses or anything, because you had the staff that has to change the shift, and the workload?
Yes, of course. We have a bonus system, and we have increased the salary of our critical specialties like ER, ICU, nurses. We increase their salaries, and we have also bonus systems. Right now, we are working about how to share this information. That now is the time we are giving bonuses to our employees. By the way, it's a very interesting point. And regarding first question,
COVID positive patients.
Yes. Fortunately, we have no COVID positive person in our in the hospitals. We have several suspect patients, and we put them in self-isolation, and by NCDC PCR test has done twice according to protocol. So fortunately, we have no infected personnel.
Okay, so that's good news, and that's very good for your hospital.
Yeah,
you mentioned also that you did reduce all possible patient flow. Does it mean that you had been postponing elective surgery, and perhaps your part of your operating rooms have been less in action than it should have been, so that you can prepare and have potential extra resources?
Well, it's a very good question. At the beginning, government, as I said previously, the main partner of our corporation is government. All medical cases, all surgeries are the expenses regarding surgeries and medical cases are covered by government, by budget. So at the beginning, it was some stunning of this process, and of course, admission in the planned surgeries decreased dramatically at the beginning. Also, there was fears in hospitals, and they tried to avoid patients with, for instance, fever and acute abdomen, they try to avoid this patient, to reject this patient. Yeah. It happened at the beginning. Nowadays, as we have a very good system of patient flows and safety flow journey of patient, we are ready and we doing or planned or urgent surgeries, and all emergency medical conditions are treated by our hospitals. And nowadays revenues and admissions are increasing step by step, because the hospitals and personnel, how to say, they quit these fears, and now they are starting work at usual schedule and usual rate. But of course, we consider every single patient as a suspect COVID patient, and PPE is used according COVID patient safety PPE.
Talking about the way you deal with the patients, how strong and well coordinated is the relation with primary healthcare center, and how have you been involved in ambulatory and home care follow-up treatments?
Relations between clinics, hospitals of Evex Hospital Corporation, Medical Corporation, and the primary healthcare system is in a pretty good condition. We have good relations, and we're getting the patients has been sent by these facilities. And regarding home care, we have no practice of home care patients with COVID infection. All COVID infected patients are in infection hospitals. All suspect patients go to the fever hospitals and waiting for test results. So we have no wide practice of home care system, as I understand your question correctly.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, of course, if you don't have practice, you cannot tell us how you are doing it. About you really insisted quite a lot on the whole protocol for protective equipments. Did you have to face a shortage? Is this equipment produced in your home country in Georgia, or did you have to import it? How did you manage? Because that's often it's a big bottleneck in many countries.
Well, no, Georgia is not producing any equipment like devices, monitors, or ventilators, and etc. But government started, and also Evex Hospitals started producing some PPE equipment, like surgical masks, like combinations, like other PPE items, but not sophisticated devices. But we are not in short of. As I said in my presentation, I show you in my presentation, at the beginning, the part of our strategy was to renew all equipment, and especially critical equipment like ventilators, non-invasive ventilators, monitors, suction devices, and so on. And so we are in a good shape, fortunately, so we can meet every requirement regarding to the patient flow increase.
A very specific questions for the emergency patients in cath lab. Did you have any specific change in the way you are dealing with them during this period?
Well, you know, sometimes and usually the patient with the chest pain, with angina, or with stroke, or another emergency medical condition, they have fever, more or less. So our approach is, in general, multi-profile hospitals, is to get the patient with the medical emergency medical condition with fever. This is urgent case, and as I said, we use PPE as suspect COVID patient protocol requires. So we make all this PPE for personnel, for patient, and all, of course, we do all that PCI or urgent surgery or thrombolysis or thrombectomy, etc. So we do not reject patient with urgent conditions.
Okay. And how do you feel that the government was supportive to all what you have put in place? Do you think that because you are a leading players and the private sector is the dominant health service providers, you had more or less the lead in deciding how to implement the COVID directive? Or did you had a on-site and technical support from government officials or government agencies?
Well, this is two-side cooperation between our corporation and healthcare officials. Most of issues, most of problems, most of protocols or strategic steps are coordinated between us. So we are one of the major consultants or cooperative team to government. Fortunately, we do not need any technical support because we have, as I said, all equipment and all technical issues in the good shape, and it's enough for us. As I said, also for COVID hospitals inside of our corporation, government takes its responsibility to cover all PPE equipment for these hospitals. So this is support from healthcare officials, and as I said, all strategic steps are coordinated between us. Sometimes we give some very important advices, and they take it into consideration, and we can see that our considerations, our experience, or our point of view are considered by government, by Ministry of Health, and we see our influence from good point of view, I say, good influence from corporation to state healthcare system, and also very good influence from healthcare system to our corporation.
Okay, another question, a little technical. It's, you know, a part of infection control is the issue of when you are creating specific areas for COVID patients. There might be the issue of the fact that this room may be positive pressure, and you would need to convert them into negative pressure. So does it mean that for the hosting the COVID patient, you had also to deal with the way the pressure of the rooms were handled and managed in the hospital?
Yeah. The majority of our facilities has can switch from positive to negative pressure. Also, operating rooms, we have dedicated operating rooms in case of getting a COVID suspect or COVID infected patient for urgent surgery. Also, we can. Hello.
Yeah.
Also, we can switch from positive to negative. Of course, it's not 100% of all isolated spaces, of course, talking honestly, but majority of our facilities has some spaces that can be switched from positive to negative pressure.
Okay, so the flexibility of the buildings and the way the ventilation of the buildings is an important element to face this kind of situation of communicable disease.
I agree.
Okay, I think we've come to an end with the questions. So I will just summarize some takeaway messages from your presentation, and you are most welcome to complete these. So the first one, which I really found very interesting, is that the very early important effort to develop protocols, but also to train the staff. You imagine usually in emergency situation that people don't invest in capacity building and training. They just, do the response often in a hectic way, while you have in a systematic approach, very early, organized, even with a TOT, so that means a cascading training and the training of the personnel. So capacity building has not been against the need of emergency response. So that's a very important message from your experience. The second one is that you had also a very systematic and comprehensive role of the hospital, both for the education of the public, but also for the staff, and supporting very early the staff to monitor his own health. So that means it's systematically making the hospital a health promoting hospital, which is something that we have been in IHF supporting and advocating for many years, along with WHO, but for which this crisis is demonstrating well, the role of hospital as a health promoting agent. The third one, which is the kind of usual one in many situations like that, is reducing the pressure of patients, the flow. But what you have done, to my understanding, is that while you have done that, you have not reduced the services. You have been able to respond still to the services, especially with virtual services, while avoiding to have too many patients that would be overwhelming potentially the facilities. The other thing which I thought was an interesting experience also is not only the emphasis on the use of the personal protective equipment, but the fact that you are also put in place a systematic monitoring process so that you could address any gaps or any dysfunctioning around the use of PPE, and on both sides, overuse and underuse. And last but not least, a very comprehensive contingency plans for replacing staff in case of being incapacitated. So that's also an interesting approach, because it means that you are also ahead of the curve with already having I would say, a B team in case the A team is not anymore in capacity to be on the play field. Any other takeaway message you would like to share with the participants before we close this webinar? And my congratulations for all the great work you have done, and really appreciated your contribution.
Yeah, well, what can I see at the closure of our session is very important, aggressive preventive steps at the beginning, delegation of hospitals and monitoring and supporting them and giving recommendations, and give them independency to solve their own problems, but to support them, it's very important. And also monitoring, self-monitoring and active monitoring of personnel in the aim of early detection of signs of COVID infection, to avoid the infection inside of the hospital among the personnel. This is the usual steps how to prevent, because preventable measures are more effective than measures done immediately. Then problem is appear. You agree?
Thank you so much, Patricia. Please, last informations, and we'll conclude with the webinar.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Professor Mamuka, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation and for sharing your experience. We really learned a lot from this webinar. To everyone, we'll be posting the recording of this webinar on our website, and you will be notified by email as soon as it's available. We're still organizing a number of webinars this May, and in June, the schedule is now on your screen, and we'll post more information in the coming days. So you can go to www.ihf-fih.org/webinars to be updated and to register for these webinars. We hope you can join us on the 15th of May. Dr. Els van der Wilden van Leer from GS1 will explain how GS1 standards can aid in the challenges of safety and efficiency of hospital supply chains. Safe supply chain and product identification are very important, especially within the situation we are currently in. So we hope to see you there. In the meantime, please stay safe and healthy. Together, we will overcome this global crisis. Thanks again for joining us today. Professor Mamuka, thank you very much for your
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.